Hello, I'm Steve Hauser, and I was editor-in-chief of the Annals from October 2005 until 2013. The first issue published under my tenure was the first issue of 2006. Well, it was a tumultuous time, certainly in medical publishing and also in neurology. In 2005, we were ready to transition from paper to electronic submissions. And it's hard to believe today that we would send our manuscripts to journals through the US Postal Service. There were so many breakthroughs that happened during that period. We were 2 years after the completion of the Human Genome Project. And this was transforming translational science in a way that was not even evident at the time to the degree that it is today. We were able to move from size polymorphisms, of which there were a couple of hundred in the genome, to 1 million single nucleotide polymorphisms, changing the whole landscape of how we screened for disease-causing changes, from families only to individuals with matched control populations. And the informatics and computational infrastructure that needed to be built to make these transitions possible was quite daunting. So this was a very exciting time. There were many other areas of neuroscience and medicine that were changing during this period. During our tenure, fibroblast reprogramming by Yamanaka and colleagues, permitting us to have inducible pluripotent stem cells. This was enormously important, and of course continues to be, because it improved our preclinical models of disease. Computer-brain interfaces, deep brain stimulation, another huge area of engineering progress. MRI improvements, and I think the umbrella of computation and big data, whether it reflected itself in electronic medical records or in our ability to aggregate data to make associations between environment and disease that was never before possible. The Annals had a huge impact, huge interest in the newly diagnosed autoimmune diseases of the nervous system. One of our most important papers dealt with neuromyelitis optica and antibody screening for NMO-type disorders. We were very interested in autoimmune encephalitis. During our tenure, the NMDA autoimmune encephalitis was first described, and that led, after Joe Dalmo's initial description, to an explosion of new discoveries of particular autoimmune inflammatory diseases, of which there are now more than 45. And perhaps the most highly cited paper in our entire 8 years was the new classification of multiple sclerosis that Chris Pullman led. Any MS paper worth its salt had to reference that 2010 reassessment of the classic criteria for MS diagnosis. So I was very happy that the Annals was the home for that manuscript with the new diagnostic criteria for MS, even though it wasn't the most impactful paper. It was the most highly cited one. Well, by the time I became editor at Annals, I think the public perception was changing. In the early 70s, during training, neurology was seen as a pre-therapeutic specialty. Sinemet for L-DOPA therapy for Parkinson's disease was beginning to change that. But there was still a therapeutic nihilism in the field and a feeling in medicine that the brain and the nervous system was just too complicated for us to really get a handle on it scientifically in a way that could lead to useful therapeutics. And we, of course, were trailing our colleagues in cardiovascular medicine, in cancer medicine, in infectious diseases. But that was changing, and the ANA was at the forefront of that change. And I wanted the journal to reflect this new image for neurology. Youthful, happening, the place to be if you were interested in making an impact in medical conditions that affect billions of people. It was already clear that neuroscience would be the future. During our tenure, the Human Brain Project, for example, began. We'd meet every Friday. We'd begin with lunch and then keep going. It was very hands-on, intellectually incredibly stimulating, and most important, fun. And I think the journal reflected that. One highlight of the changes that we made to the journal was a monthly message from the editor. We did more than 100 of these. We cover so many topics. Translational advances, therapeutics, of course, but also training, drug prices, technology in medicine, even movie reviews. The other thing that we do is hit the hustings. We look for great opportunities to publish in our pages, and especially the ANA and Society for Neuroscience meetings each fall. We tell presenters when we heard something really great that we could review their work within 48 hours. And we have it in page, in press, in everyone's hands within 5 weeks. Maybe one other area of interest was that during our tenure, as today, important questions about reproducibility were being raised by voices and by the public appropriately. So we had a policy to publish all work that was reasonably performed and failed to reproduce papers in our journal, and sometimes papers in other journals, particularly very high impact journals that had rejected the failure to confirm. So we welcome debates within our pages about prior work that others could not reproduce. And I thought that was sometimes challenging, but was incredibly exciting. Half of one journal was devoted to a point-counterpoint about one particular area, proteasome inhibition in Parkinson's disease. We had another debate about vitamin D-related genes and multiple sclerosis risk. So we tried to be a place where even controversial issues could be aired as fully as possible. And the annual meeting was just so incredible to me. It was a place, and really the only place, where a young person could meet the academic luminaries in our field. It was small enough so that there was real conversation that could take place. We'd spend time together, and they would actually be in the first few rows at our presentations. The cottage industry that the meeting reflected was just so exciting to a young neurologist like myself who aspired towards a career in academic medicine. We're all anchored in neurology and brain sciences. And the ANA is the home, and the only real home, where we can come together across disciplines. In 2025, we are more siloed than ever. Even the neuroimmunologists are in different areas depending upon their particular specialty. And there needs to be a place for us to come together where the silos break down, not only because it makes our environment richer and because we are fundamentally scientists and physicians of the brain, not of a single autoantibody causing a single disorder, but because the opportunities to advance medicine and science by bringing together disciplines is huge. It's an enormous opportunity for helping the billions of patients worldwide who suffer from terrible brain diseases. And fundamentally, it is the home that is responsible for the training and nurturing of the next generation of physicians who are also deeply interested in science and in helping not only the 20 patients we might see in a day, but maybe hundreds of thousands or millions of patients. Inspiring this group, I think, is perhaps the ANA's most important task and opportunity. We're going to see amazing things happen, hopefully on a trajectory that continues to accelerate. And it's young people who are connecting the laboratories with the clinics who are going to be at the center of those advances. So I think the ANA has a daunting but critically important mission ahead of it. And I'm sure they'll be successful.